Reaching high. Reaching high. Hello everybody and welcome to the World Series League's GT3 Championship EU edition powered by IMB. We're starting off with a press day here at Le Mans, the circuit which just 6 months ago was hosting the first round of Season 3. It's great to be back once again for another 10-round season with GT3 cars once again in this prestigious championship that is growing season on season. It's fantastic to be starting towards the back end of 2022, running out towards our finale at Bathurst before the year is out. My name is Ian O'Leary. I'm alongside Zach Sweeney here for tonight and indeed the season as well. Just a press day to get us underway, Zach, at the circuit which we started off last season. It produced some great racing for us there. It's a great testing ground for what's to come really in this season, with such a mix of corners, long straights, tight corners and also some fast sections as well. It really will test out every aspect of these cars today.
It really will, and of course we come into this new season, season 4, with sort of a rework on how things, especially amongst the classes. We're going to have 3 classes: the pros, the pro-ams, and the AMs. So a lot more drivers on track, and hopefully a lot more drama and chaos to go with it. But yeah, you're very right in saying we started last season off here at Le Mans. We saw great racing. While it did look on paper to be sheer domination from Alex Renger, we don't have him on the grid this season. So fingers crossed it can be a little bit more shaken up amongst the pros in the championship. But yeah, nonetheless, you've got Le Mans, you've got that long Mulsanne straight, you've got slipstream galore, and you've got 2 races to test it a little bit, see where you are in the pecking order, and obviously then see where you are obviously in the pecking order, and then looking forward to how your season could progress. But yeah, definitely 2 races here, no stakes, no pressure, just a bit of fun and going out there and see what you got.
Absolutely. The absence of Alex Renger, probably the biggest story in terms of the entry list here. Ashamed, obviously, not to see him back in the pro category, but yeah, he's not here, and maybe gives a chance to somebody else to have a bit of a go, because he did dominate just a little bit throughout season 3. The other notable things, of course, you mentioned it briefly there, the pro-am and am categories now changed a little bit. More than 3,000 I rating and you'll be in the pro category. Between 2,000 and 3,000 you're in pro-am, and between 1,250 and 2,000 you're in the am category here for this season. So that's how the things have been shaken up. We have been told that the 3 classes will be split once again in terms of the starting order, and when we get underway there will be a class split between the 3 categories, so we'll be able to watch them all individually. But it remains to be seen, really, Zach, how it affects the racing with the pros and the AMs last season. Just 2 categories. It was very easy to see who was a pro and who was an AM. Exceptionally easy, in fact. But now it's a little bit more different, because I guess the bottom of one category kind of filters into the top of the next. So it all seems to merge into one ever so slightly.
It does, just a little bit, but it is an interesting prospect. We'll have to see, how it plays out when we get to the track. I mean, in theory, you've got a separate class, a separate championship, and more drivers on the circuit to, fight for those higher up positions. So in theory, it should be a great addition. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, you're right in saying that it sort of does filter it out, make it more welcoming, because what we saw last season is, the top end of the AMs were contending with sort of the bottom end of the pros, and that obviously didn't make it as fair as it could for sort of the midfield and back end of the AMs to really compete for those top end positions. So to have a separate class for those that are quicker than the AMs but not quite as quick as the pros to have their own little place certainly is going to make things interesting.
Yeah, certainly for the guys at the back of AM, as you mentioned, they did get a little bit wrecked in this last season. So hopefully more competitiveness for everyone. Let's have a look at the grid there, and it's a huge one, so we'll try and get through as quickly as possible. Harry Wills taking the pole position ahead of new driver Elliot Heller. Then we've got Stuart Reynolds returning alongside Albin Kjellberg. Then we've got Orjus Yomantas alongside Neil Butler. Chris Chatterton returns again, he's 7th ahead of Matthew McBride. Callum Beeman will be in 9th ahead of Kenny Hermans, and just outside the top 10, Taylor Lane and Lee Holmes sharing the 6th row. Finally in the pros, it's Thomas Dandridge, Louis Gardner and Andy Miller running at the 15 pros. Top of Pro-Am for Jeremy De Boyve, who had a great season in AM in season 3. Liam Ahern is 2nd there ahead of Didier Vlaminck. Then we've got Edward Packer and Lucas Romano. Francois Pergerow, it will be in that 6th position ahead of Michael Patterman. Chris Thacker will be in 8th place ahead of Juho Huutonen. And then it'll be Job Williams running out to the top 10. Daniel Merchant will be in 11th ahead of Simon Dodd in 12th. These are still Pro-Ams, by the way. Stuart Winus will be alongside Felix Pale. Dean Timms all the way down in 15th, somewhat surprisingly. Alex Bomberg, Sebastian Norgran and Ashraf El Haddad will round out the Pro-Ams. Then Timo Makia will line up first of the AMs. Louis Boubier alongside him with James Slates and Dirk Bounce on row 2. Tony Norgran will be in the 5th position ahead of his countryman Jarmo Sastamoinen in that 6th place. And then going even further down to the likes of Gus Franken and Jerome Rains. They'll be on the next row together, along with Jasper Sharks as well. Mark Bailey running outside the top 10. Alistair Hatcher will be in 11th ahead of Glenn Humberstone. And then we've got Jürgen Knockart and Anthony Letts. Connor Botting will be 15th ahead of Craig Schill. Mark Oliver and Navarro De Boy will be sharing the 9th row of the AM field. And that just about does it for your 51 car grid. It's an absolutely huge entry here, Zach, and yeah, very, very high numbers in all three of the categories. Hopefully competitive racing as well, because we've seen some of the familiar names, those that were here last year, spread across all three.
We have, so hopefully they can sort of, get the season off to a good start. They've got some experience under the belt and really should shake things up. But yeah, we were completely filling the entries across all three categories. A lot of cars out there on track. It's going to be busy, it's going to be hectic, and hopefully that transpires onto lap one.
Absolutely. We've got the class splits very much underway, as you can see, heading towards through Maison Blanche and heading towards the Ford chicanes at the end of the lap to get this season underway. Just the press day, of course, so no, it doesn't matter too much, but these drivers will want to win regardless. Same format as last season with a 25-minute race to kick us off. And then the classes will be reversed. Within your own class, you'll be reserved for a 50-minute race, double the length, to sort the drivers out once again. They come through the Ford chicane for the first time, and the World Series League GT3 Championship is set to get underway once again here for its season 4, and Harry Wills is going to get us underway. He's in control of the field at the moment, making them wait an awfully long time before getting underway. Elliot Heller just waiting to step on the gas and follow him, but he's not reacted particularly well. Harry Wills has got a nice jump of a couple of car lengths already, heading towards the Dunlop chicanes for the very first time. He's able to take his own racing line in towards those first couple of corners and stretch out a bit of a lead already, with Albin Kjellberg getting away nicely in that third position as well. Stuart Reynolds had to hold off a couple behind, and he's just pulled off to the side of the road going down the hill. Not sure what all that's about, but he's just pulled off completely. Must have been a slow down penalty through the first chicane. Not the way he would have wanted to start this race, as through the first couple of corners come the Pro-Ams now.
They do indeed. Jeremy de Boyver leads the way, doing a great job. The Belgian, he did a really good showing last season here at Le Mans as well. He's followed closely by Liam Ahern, who is trying his absolute best to stay with him now. Dean Timms, the AM Championship winner last season for season 3, all the way down in P16, trying to make quick work through the field, but now's the best time to do it while they're all bunched up.
It absolutely is, as the AM drivers get underway as well. Timo McKeon getting off to a nice start, and will get away from Boubier by the looks of things through the first couple of corners. Dirk Bouts and James Slate's fight over third place just in behind, but you can already see the Anfield a little bit more spread out, suggesting that McKeon might have gone a little bit earlier than what we saw from some of the other class leaders, as Jasper Sharks unfortunately has gone off at turn number 1. A couple of changes for the lead though in Pro and Pro-Am. We'll get to those in a couple of moments and see how Sharks went around. It looks like it was just over the curbs completely by himself.
Yeah, a bit of a shame. Not the way you want to get your season underway. Even though it is a press day, you don't want to get your season underway like that. As we cut our way back to the pros, there was a car going off there. I think that was Thomas Dandridge. I think so indeed. Louis Gardner as well has gone off track with him. Yet 2 cars piled up there at the first of the 2 Marsan chicanes. And again, it's always going to be carnage and chaos as you enter the braking zone for the first time. And it just looks like Gardner got into the back of Dandridge there. That is certainly a shame.
Too late on the brakes there from Gardner, certainly, and it's unfortunately resulted in those 2 cars going around. There is your new race leader though, Elliot Hellier in the lead right now, and Harry Wills just sticking with him for the moment. Was the pole sitter, of course, and does show himself to maybe have that slight edge when it comes to pace, but we'll see whether that remains over the course of the race. He's of course got the long straights to use the slipstream and keep in touch. In touch, those guys in behind are not being able to do that so far. By the looks of things, you can see Butler there in that 4th place, just making a bit of a gap open of almost 2 seconds, certainly a second and a half right now, so it's not looking good for those who are caught a little bit behind that, as just in front of Ashraf Al Haddad. That's very late on the brakes from one of the Mercedes, joins straight back onto the road, straight into the path of El Haddad, who's going to be very unpleased about how that happened.
Yeah, to say the absolute least, that is certainly suboptimal. I think that was Juho Huutonen who accidentally tagged him around the number 44. Unfortunately for him, back to the AMS. They now run their way through Arnage for the first time. Louis Boubier is under a bit of pressure from James Slates and Timo McEwen, who are just in behind, practically pushing each other through. And now on this run, trying to close the gap. Again, the slipstream is going to be so prevalent. You can just see it as Dirk Bouch tries to stretch the advantage now into this sort of flat out section before they get to Indianapolis. Actually, I do apologise. And now Boubier is under a lot of pressure. Here comes McEwen. Oh my word. And Slate's trying to make it 3 wide side by side as they head under brakes. Bit of contact. That Mercedes was nearly sent around Timo McEwen under a lot of pressure there. Is, yeah, well, it's certainly getting all argy-bargy and, well, a little bit too much in the background as well.
Yeah, a couple of cars going off the road, but I'm very surprised that contact in towards Indianapolis here at the front of that field didn't result in anything worse for those drivers. Gus Franken was one of those who ended up in the gravel on the outside line. He got smashed by one of the Ferraris who was fighting side by side going into the back left-hander. And unfortunately, Franken ended up in the gravel, although, well, I was about to say he doesn't look like he'd gotten too much damage, but then went off again at Arnage. So it looks like maybe there is something affecting it, unless got hit for a second time in 2 corners. Let's see as he goes down to... Oh no, it was him on this occasion getting into the back of one of the Porsches, and so just waited for that driver just up in front there to rejoin. That was Schill just up in front. Decided to wait, probably the right thing to do. So Franken drops to the very back of this very, very big field indeed. Up towards the front though, the 3 leaders stay locked together. And already Elliot is doing a lot to try and weave around and to try and defend from Harry Wills. It's quite early on in the race really, but already some very aggressive defending from the Porsche.
Yeah, he doesn't want to give it up at all. Harry Wills trying to hammer the pressure. He's maintained in the Mercedes from season 3 to 4. Just in behind Albin Kjellberg, the Swede. He was in the Mercedes last season. So jump ship to the BMW, decided it was the better option, is now actually still holding firm. So no change in pace from the Swedish driver now. Coming through the second of the 2 Mulsanne chicanes. And he's putting some pressure on, trying to move up in a second place. But again, that is the thing. With Le Mans, as you can see, he's practically pushing Harry Wills now down this back straight. Doesn't want to really move out too early because you do just get hit by a brick wall of air. Under brakes now for the actual second chicane of the Mulsanne straight. Again, getting him a little bit mixed up there, but Albin Kjellberg follow him nice and closely. That's the thing with being in a pack of 3. When you're in third, you're in sort of that sticky situation. If you fight too hard with second, first place just drives away, and especially at like a track at Le Mans, you cannot lose. You cannot afford to lose that slipstream to the leader.
Certainly can't. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a 2-car battle develop for 4th, and then 3 cars for 7th, or 4 indeed for 7th. There's one just tucked in behind Taylor Lane at the moment, side by side for one of the more prominent positions in Pro-Am as well. Down the inside for Chris Thacker there, and he does make his way through on John Williams, who's made a decent start from 10th place in the order. He's had a nice run off of the second Mulsanne chicane there as well, moving up back into 6th place where he was previously. Now these 2 run side by side, possibly teammates as well, running very similar Eclipse Racing BMW liveries there, so possibly something going on there. But it looks like Thacker has just got that little bit more straight line speed. Williams certainly struggling to keep up, and he's got the inside line, so he will stay in front just for the moment, as there's a lot of nose to tail contact there. Harry Wills drops down, not entirely sure what this is all about, but the only thing I can think of really is a slow down penalty that he had to serve here.
Easily done at Le Mans because there's quite a bit of track that isn't track, and it's very easy just to get a little bit too greedy and run wide. But we're going to take a look, and yeah, just looks to be a slowdown pulling over to the right, and you can just see how that loss of momentum costs him so dearly. He's now fallen down to P5 after running in 2nd place, and sort of just release Elliot Haler and Albin Kjellberg to have their own little 2-way fight towards the front. So a big shame for Harry Wills, but again, that raw pace that we saw last season certainly hasn't left. Again, it's just small mistakes here and there that continue to cost him.
Absolutely, we saw that a lot throughout the EU season and the US seasons actually in season 3. See if he can just stitch it up together a little bit better, and oh dear, as one of the other Mercedes off the road, it's Rafael Haddad, who's not had the greatest race so far. Absolutely mangled front end here. It looks like it may have been on his own going towards the Indianapolis corner. Let's see, he gets all over that curb on the right hand side, snaps out of control, and that is a painful one into that wall that is just at a very unappealing angle. And El Haddad's done a very good job to actually get it out the wall and continue on racing, but you can be sure he's going to be in the pit lane after that one.
Yeah, God knows how he's managed to keep that one rolling, but fair play. That is, you are going very, very quickly as you go into Indianapolis. You turn that right-hander pretty much flat out, nearly maybe a bit of a confidence lift if you're a little bit shaky going in, but usually flat out, and then you're braking as you're still turning. So it is a very sketchy corner nonetheless. Looking for a couple of changes. There's a bit of a spin for the Audi as Dirk Bouch just about manages to avoid him here, the leader of the AMS, but just catching in the corner of my eye, changing the Pro-Ams between De Boyver and Liam Ahern. Both of them running very, very close there. Sasta Morning going to the inside for P3 and AMS, and here's Liam Ahern. Was fighting towards the sharp end of Pro-Am, but once again a costly mistake is costing yet another driver.
Yeah, it's becoming, I don't remember this being a thing 6 months ago when we came here, or even less than that when we came here for the first round of Season 3, but it's becoming a bit of a problem here today so far as the battles continue on in Pro. Stuart Reynolds holding on to this place and regaining these places, of course, after his slowdown penalty at the very first couple of corners of the race. He's allowed those guys in behind to fight between themselves. Taylor Lane looks like he's held on for 7th place at least, but he's coming under fire from a couple of drivers just in behind in the form of Callum Beeman and Matthew McBride as well, who are both pretty much where they started, now fighting with Lane once again in the Mercedes. Doesn't quite have the straight line speed of Beeman down the straight. Outside line for the Mercedes. If he can hold it here, he'll have the inside in a moment, and that's exactly what he's done, but it's a nice run around the outside there for Beeman, who does indeed get his way through nicely. He's up to 7th place, but I have to say this race is breaking apart quite a lot more than what I expected it to, and what we saw in Season 3 as well. We have got 2 for the lead at the moment, but there were some far bigger trains than that earlier on, as it's 3 wide to the second chicane very nearly.
A little bit close between those 3. They are certainly not waiting around one bit, any of these drivers. They're really going into this press day, gloves off, absolutely going for it, argy-bargy, getting their elbows out just a little bit and just having fun with it, because obviously there's no championship points at stake. You might as well just have a bit of fun. But yeah, certainly interesting to see the spread. Obviously a lot of people getting into their own little fights, and naturally that slows them down and spreads things out just a little bit. We do have an interesting fight sort of developing for the front, as we see Patterman looking to the inside for 2nd place. Didn't quite catch it into the Mulsanne corner, and once again still a fight of 2s and 3s. This is the fight for 7th between Taylor Lane, Callum Beeman and Matthew McBride just in behind. And yeah, well, certainly a lot of drivers who don't feel that they're in too much of a hurry to give up places.
Oh dearie me, and that's a misjudgment as well from Stuart Winers, who went straight into the side of that BMW, sent spinning into the wall and towing back to pit lane straight away as well. Stuart Winers clearly intended on giving that position back up again, but in the end wasn't able to, so he's probably going to be feeling pretty bad about that one over the next few moments. Here are the 2 leaders. Elliot Haley has led most of this race so far, but it's Albin Kjellberg who's applying the pressure to him at the moment in his new BMW, of course. He's completing another lap and getting towards the halfway mark here in what should be a 7-lap race by the looks of things. Over the line once again, and Elliot Haley continues to lead, but it's not a very big margin. Kjellberg very close behind him. We'll see just what amount of a threat he's going to be throughout this race. We're not entirely sure just for the moment, as James Slates makes his way around the outside of Indianapolis in the first part, and then goes off ever so slightly in the second and goes straight into the wall.
That's got to hurt just a little bit. He was right up close to the Audi in front of him, and that is unfortunate, as we see Johan Range just trying to again fight amongst the AMs. They're trying to settle in and get into their own little fights, and now running off the last part of the lap in the Audi, fighting for P6. Very, very close between a lot of the AMs, so they might be the lowest category, but they are certainly very close on pace, and that is awesome to see, because it is always good to have the entire category close on pace, and it just goes to show that the Pro-Ams are working. Here's Felix Payel into the pit lane among a number of drivers who understandably have been caught in their own little incidents, but cannot be a planned pit stop because we are not expecting those until the 50-minute race. So Felix Payel must have picked up a bit of damage somewhere around the track.
Yeah, pit stop's not expected, of course, until that second race, but 7 drivers at the moment getting long repairs, with long repairs being at least a minute or over. Felix Payel also making that 8 cars in the pit lane, so it's been a troublesome start for some. With 51 cars out there, it's hardly surprising that some were going to have problems in the opening moments of this race. Taylor Lane is still defending from Callum Beeman and Matthew McBride just in behind. Battle for 7th. Pretty close in Pro as Jeremy De Boyver showing his colours in the lead of Pro-Am, while there's a great battle side by side behind between Michael Patterman and Dieter De Vlaminck, as well as Packer as well, who's trying to get involved in this fight for second. It is, of course, all helping De Boyver, who is going to start running away with this race if this kind of battling continues.
Yeah, and that already does seem to be the theme. You can see taken off there. Here's Dieter De Vlaminck looking to the left-hand side into the next left-hand of the chicane. The Michael Patterman trying to go the long way around. He's going to brake late. Has he got the nerve to go the long way around? No, he doesn't, is the answer to that one. And the BMW Dieter De Vlaminck gets himself up into second place. Bit of a distance up to the race leader of Jeremy De Boyver, who has really sailed off into the distance, not looked back, not been under any pressure whatsoever, and certainly been assisted by Dieter De Vlaminck, Michael Patterman, and Packer just in behind there in the BMW as well. So all of them giving Jeremy a nice little helping hand, and you can see now Michael Patterman already on the counter-attack, looking to the outside of the Mulsanne corner, but again, that's just never going to work. One line all the way through, unless you're really, really brave or really stupid. Either way, fine line between the two. But yeah, if they want any chance of winning this race, they certainly need to settle down and start working together.
And it's certainly not over. Just over 10 minutes in this race, and if they do get their heads down here, there is a possibility. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any cooperation between this trio now. Inside line for Patterman again, who wants to retake this second place. And it looks like he's going to have the legs to do so, as this is much more organised and much more sensible from Elliot Hellier and Albin Kjellberg in behind. I just wonder if they're a little bit concerned about Harry Wills returning once again, possibly with Butler in tow. And so they're just trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So for now, with 3 laps to go, they're going to run in tandem and make sure that it's just the two of them to fight over the race win.
A lot easier to win a 1v1 than it is, a 1v1v1 or bring in a number of other drivers into the mix. So yeah, for now, working together just to make sure it's them two going at it on that sort of final lap, final run, and then they can ensure that at the worst they're finishing second. But yeah, nice mutual teamwork between the pair of them. Good racecraft shown as well, because it is a patient game. It can be difficult running in second place for Albin Kjellberg, especially with the benefit of the slipstream, to sort of resist that urge, that temptation to go for the move. But he knows long term, even though it's only a 25-minute race, even though it's only a press day, he knows long term in this race that it will be a lot more beneficial just to wait it out, go for that move towards the end, because it's so easy to go for that move, get caught up in a battle, trip over each other, and then Harry Wills is always going to be ready to pick up the pieces. But fair play to Harry Wills after that slowdown a bit earlier on. He's done well to work his way back up onto a podium place.
And he's actually closing in this gap despite not having much help from behind. The gap's only 4.5 seconds now. It was closer to 5.5 when we picked up this fight at the Porsche curves, excuse me. You can see that Albin Kjellberg is very close, and Hellier clearly worried about that, but Kjellberg also emphasising the fact to the leader at the moment that we need to work together right now, and I'm just going to push you into line at the moment. This is bizarre between the two of them. You very, very rarely see that one driver defending as if they're about to get overtaken for the lead of the race, the other bumping them while still being on the defensive line. A bizarre situation, but two of them right now know what they need to do, or at least Kjellberg does. They're still very intent on speeding around and defending as much as possible. We're going to get a very close-up view for a Porsche GT3 diffuser in a few moments' time. And going in car now. Kjellberg not quite able to get as close down towards on the slightly shorter run towards the second Mulsanne chicane. The Porsche does seem pretty strong off of those chicanes. It always has been strong in terms of its traction. Showing that once again. Down towards Mulsanne corner. They're going to go, and it doesn't look like too much is going to happen between the two. Mark Oliver, though, has been in the walls a little bit by the looks of things. What's happened here? Down towards Arnage. Gets on that curb and goes for a spin.
That Astro is always going to be very slippery, especially under braking. As soon as one tyre has got uneven grip, that imbalance just, yeah, the cars don't like it very much, and you have to feel for him there. Car's being sent around, and there's not really much you can do. You get to that point of no return. As soon as you start braking that Astro, it is always going to be a sketchy situation. But again, we put our attention back to the front two of Elliot Hellier and Albin Kjellberg, 1 and 2. And you do sort of have to feel for Hellier, because he is in a bit of a predicament. He doesn't know how much to trust Kjellberg. I've definitely been in that position before, being the lead driver and trying to work towards a better goal, but not knowing for sure if you're sort of secure enough to not defend, because it'd be so easy for Kjellberg to lead him into that false into security and then overtake him and capitalize on it. But yeah, he's just playing it safe, I suppose. But Kjellberg definitely can be a bit frustrating if he's saying, come on, let's try and get away, only for it to not happen. This is a fight for P7 between Beament Lane and McBride. Again, they're in their own little trip, but they've also got Harriman just in the background of shot, so it could very quickly become a four-way fight. But certainly between all three categories, Ewan, we're seeing no shortage of action.
Certainly, I mean, I would just going back to Howie once again. I would understand that train of thought if I thought that there was no way he was going to be able to re-overtake Kjellberg. But I feel like with 6 minutes to go and 2 laps when they get to the line, it doesn't matter if Kjellberg goes through right now. He can still come back at him throughout the remainder of this race, so it doesn't really need to be defended so fiercely. But either way, that's what's happening in the lead. Further down towards the back, towards the back end of the top 10 in AMS, all going on here with Timo McKeown, pole sitter, of course, of this category. It's not gone very well for him by the looks of things in this race. With Jeroen Reis and Botting as well, Charlie Botting in the Audi, side by side, as Botting goes right round the outside and does well to hang on to the car. And Connor Botting, I should say, not Charlie. Connor Botting there going right round the outside and making a nice move, making his way up into 7th place. Timo McKeown falling to 8th and continues to fall. Not entirely sure how he could be so strong in qualifying and then so far off the pace in the race. Dirk Bouch is not that far up the road, but he's still miles ahead comparatively of where Timo McKeown is, who's not had a notable incident that I know of, but has just fallen away.
Is a shame to see, but again, just goes to show that qualifying does not tell the entire story. He has got a reverse grid race to look forward to, as we see Stuart Reynolds now in towards the Dunlop chicane, braking on the curb. He's managed to keep it tidy for now, but going in gets a bit squirmy, and then of course the Mercedes behind him just doesn't know what to do. He's expecting Reynolds to take a normal line, take a normal speed, and then once he realizes it's a bit too late, but oh my word, what have we got going on here? A long train, and Stuart Reynolds is sort of caught up in the mix of it now. After that spin, he's now fighting. That is for P5. We've got Yomantis, Callum Beament, Taylor Lane, Stuart Reynolds, Matthew McBride, and Kenny Harriman all locked in this train from 5th all the way down to 10th. The move just in front as well between Beament and Yomantis. To the inside goes the Porsche. A beautiful move there, pretty textbook, and up the inside. But oh my word, these are the sorts of scenes you expect to see at the Circuit de la Sarthe.
Certainly is, and for some reason we haven't been seeing so far. We're not seeing it for the lead, but at least we are getting this kind of racing. Finally, 6 cars in this fight for 5th place. It's currently being led by Callum Beaumont, who's getting a bit of a push right now from Yomantis down towards the 2nd chicane, although 2 in behind. Taylor Lane and Stuart Reynolds have still got more speed. Looks like they're going to just have a little peek, but not actually going to go for anything on this occasion. In behind as well, a couple of BMWs fighting in behind as well. That's for 9th and 10th, and they're in danger of losing the slipstream if they do that just a little bit too much, as we've seen the story of this race so far very much surrounding that for now, as you'd expect to see. For some reason Reynolds just losing a bit of time now on this straight, just losing the slipstream a little bit, but now gets back in touch just ever so slightly. No move made at the Mulsanne corner. We're going to get a replay of Craig Schill, who's down towards the back of the AM field. We mentioned that earlier on, getting out of shape through Corvette and getting into the wall. That's another car with quite a lot of damage to the front end.
Yeah, once again, we're seeing a lot of cars on the limit. This is, once again, the fight now for P4, with Neil Butler leading the way. He's keeping up a large train. Callum Beament trying to make steady progress in towards the braking zone of Indianapolis. All of them keeping it nice and tidy. In fact, no, actually, it is Beament has really sailed off into the distance. It's now Yomantis that holds up the train for 6th. He's got Taylor Lane for company. I've actually got no clue what I'm talking about. It's Butler on the back of Wills and Beament who's leading the way in P5. He's not taken off at all. He's landlocked sort of in this train of, we've got sort of, about 5 cars we've still got going all the way back down to Matthew McBride in P10. So we've got to fight for the final podium place. We've got to fight for the back end of the top 5, and a lot of action as well to look forward to amongst the front 2 as we enter now the closing stages. Only 2 minutes left on the clock, certainly ticking down to what will be the last lap, or last couple of laps certainly. But yeah, a lot of action, and you can see, Yomantis really pushing the limits, getting all over the rear end of that Porsche in front.
We are indeed about to go on to the final lap. Not very many laps in this first 25-minute race, not at Le Mans anyway. And so it's going to be over almost before it started, but down towards the final chicanes in this battle for P5, it's going to get very, very exciting between these guys, but also remains to be seen what's going to happen between the leaders as well, as that was wide from Taylor Lane. He might well get eaten up ever so slightly by Stuart Reynolds down the straight here. Reynolds doesn't have the benefit of the slipstream though, which is going to be a bit annoying for him, and he might not be able to get through as a result, although Lane gives him a very, very wide berth, and so it does indeed get through, as John Williams has now been off the road and into the wall indeed in the BMW. It was a side-by-side battle with one of the Mercedes that went wrong by the looks of things in the end. Oh, there was contact made between the two. Oh goodness, and a free car incident in the end at very high speed.
That is beautiful in some sadistic sense, I suppose, but now we see side by side once again. This is a different angle of it. John Williams getting a little bit close, bit of understeer. The Mercedes squeezes the gap, and John Williams, a passenger, that other BMW, you have to feel for him, and then Williams brings it back onto the circuit as another BMW is coming through, which is a little bit scary, but yeah, no harm for anyone else involved. This is Liam Ahern, who ran a little bit wide off the exit, had to get a slowdown penalty, and then decides to go over the grass, and well, that is certainly the way you don't want to be taking it. He's pulled off to the side of the track, and now John Williams into the pit lane. But now as we go on to this final lap, we see a lot of action start to kick off. Here's Taylor Lane, the fight for P8. He's side by side with Harriman, and now the move for the lead.
Finally, it has come. Albin Kjellberg has been waiting all race for this moment, and Elliot Helder has been just waiting all race to try and defend from it, and it's not been able to happen for Hellier there. He's had to just give up the lead for a moment to Kjellberg, although it's not going to be over just yet. The Porsche is going to be in the slipstream of the BMW on this long run down towards Mulsanne corner, but are we going to see enough straight line speed out of this Porsche? The BMW does look like it just has a little bit extra over Hellier at the moment, side by side between the two. They go down into the braking zone. It's a bit of a lift off towards the end of that with Hellier, so he's going to set himself up for a good run off of this corner and maybe have a go into Indianapolis. He's very, very close indeed, and Kjellberg realises that, weaves around already in protest to try and make sure the Porsche doesn't have a go, doesn't even get an attempt at this, but it doesn't look like anything he can do right now can stop the charge of this Porsche around the outside for Hellier. Will he be able to get alongside enough? It looks like he has it. He draws level on the way down towards Indianapolis. Outside line, Kjellberg has not really got the line. Round the outside for Hellier, he's done it. Kjellberg tries to go round the outside through the bank left-hander. He can't do it there. And into Arnage, he's going to have to go for the outside line as once again Hellier defends. Now Kjellberg will try and get the run here himself, and he'll try and go for it into the Porsche curves. It's already weaving around, and the Porsche using its traction just to get away ever so slightly. Kjellberg now using the straight line speed and the slipstream to get near into the Porsche curves. It's going to have to happen here. This is the last chance for him realistically, and it's going to have to be outside line through the right-hander as well. He's got his nose in front on the way in. The two are side by side through the corner. This could continue on for some time. They give each other space just enough as they rub through the left-hander again. Side by side even so, as Hellier just gets his nose in front. Kjellberg right around the outside of the long right-hander. Oh, and there's contact. Hellier's off the road into the gravel, and it's going to be a lot worse than second for him. Kjellberg didn't seem to do an awful lot wrong. There was a slight bit of contact, but he isn't going to care really. He's going to take the win on the press day by the looks of things. Race 1 is going to go to him, and after a great last lap fight with Elliot Hellier, it's going to go to Albin Kjellberg in the BMW to win the first race of the press day. Harry Wills will get second, and in the end Hellier won't even finish on the podium as Neil Butler takes the bottom step ahead of his fellow Porsche. What an exciting final lap that was.
I'm speechless amongst those two. What? It's a shame that it ended in such a way with Hellier going round, but while it lasted, that was just beautifully magnificent. Just not a lot of words you can do to do that sort of skirmish justice. We see Jeremy De Boyver now entering the final couple of chicanes. He's been completely dominant in the Pro-Ams, but wow, that race, if that's how all season long is, sign me up.
It's a great drive from Jeremy De Boyver to take home the Pro-Am win. Wasn't really challenged in that one, in all honesty. He will certainly get a challenge coming up in the 50-minute race. Didier Fleming holds off Michael Patterman for second, and Am champion Team Timms from the back of the grid gets all the way up to fifth. He will be one to be reckoned with throughout the season. I wonder if he's just sandbagging ever so slightly, just so that nobody quite realises quite how strong he is. We'll see. Dirk Bouts has had a very strong result here for the AMs as well. That's exactly why we have the free classes now, because Dirk Bouts didn't really get anywhere near the race victories in the AM category last season because of the standard of the drivers that were in there. But now every driver has a chance of winning their respective category. Dirk Bouts has done that in AM ahead of Jarmo Sastimoinen. And rounding out the podium, all the way outside the top 30, it's Anthony Bruce Letts in that number 50. So nice drive from those guys to get onto the podium, but a nice race from everybody. I mean, I guess the downside being 12 drivers unfortunately had to come in to make a pit stop at some point throughout that race, which is quite a lot. Certainly quite a few incidents throughout the race. But here's a replay of just what happened in the battle for the lead, side by side into Indianapolis, round the outside from Hellier. And he didn't quite have the race won at this point, but certainly the best overtaking opportunities were behind Albin Kjellberg when they got to this stage.
They were, but Kjellberg just pulled something out the bag, completely sent it, just put everything on the line, completely risking it all, and just went for it, and fair play for it, because, yeah, he really did put on a show. You can see Hellier definitely feels a lot more secure now. He's still going defensive just to cover off his bases, but Albin Kjellberg with the send of the century to the left-hand side, you don't see moves done here often, and we're just, again, just going to have to sit back and just admire it, because around the outside, back to the inside, we saw John Williams go around at this point, but both of them, great respect. It does take two to tango, and Kjellberg, very easy for him to run wide here and just put Hellier into the barrier, but pushing the limits and really giving each other a good scrap. Now into the next right-hander to round off these very quick corners, and Kjellberg once again with the inside. It was a bit of contact there, which is to be expected. That Porsche once again getting tagged. I think a bit of netcode just sent Hellier into a bit of a spiral, bit of a spin that unfortunately he wasn't able to recover from quick enough. But while it lasted, that battle was just intense.
Yeah, and I don't think you put too much blame on Kjellberg really for that one. After all, Hellier did have a bit more space to his right-hand side that he could have used to stay out the way of the contact, but in the end did not. And unfortunately, did end up in the gravel. We are waiting for a couple of drivers to finish their races, by the way. We've still got Glenn Humberstone to come over the line. And also Alistair Hatcher as well. There is Hatcher, I believe. He is indeed. In the number 88. Oh, excuse me, that is Humberstone. In the 21 Porsche. Crawling his way to the line. And also, Alistair Hatcher going at a little bit more of a race pace right now towards the final couple of corners. Once we've completed that, we'll have the race results for you. Maybe a chat with one or two of the drivers, if indeed they're willing to join and get in the waiting room. If not, then we'll be taking a short break in a few moments, of course, and getting ourselves set for the slightly more chaotic reverse grid 50-minute race. But there is Alistair Hatcher making his way through the final couple of corners. And he is over the line now to complete the sprint race here at Le Mans. Starting with the AMs, it was Dirk Bouts who took the victory by 4.7 seconds ahead of Jarmo Sastimoinen. Anthony Letts was third ahead of Louis Boubier and Tony Norgran. Johan Reigns at 6th place ahead of Connor Botting. Timo McKeon dropped to 8th from pole with Mark Bailey and Navarro de Boiva rounding up the top 10. Jasper Stark just missed out with Gus Franken. James Slate, the last car within a minute, with Craig Schill in 14th. Jürgen Knockout was 15th ahead of Glenn Humberstone and Alistair Hatcher. We just saw come across the line. Mark Oliver, the first driver, one lap down in 18th place. In the Pro-Am category, it was Jeremy de Boiva once again returning to winning ways ahead of Didier de Vlaeminck, who held off Michael Patterman for second. Chris Thacker was in fourth ahead of Dean Timms, who rose from the very back of the grid into the top 5. Edward Packer at 6th place ahead of Juho Huutonen. Then we got Stuart Wyess and Francois Pedriel in that 9th place. Felix Peel rounding up the top 10 in the final car on the lead lap. John Williams after that contact ended up one lap down with Liam Ahern, both of whom were in the pit lane at the end of that race. Simon Dodd will benefit from the reverse grid, and he'll start another reverse grid race from pole, as he seems to do almost on a weekly basis. Daniel Merchant will be in that 14th position ahead of Sebastian Norgran, Alex Bomberg, Ashraf El Haddad and Lucas Romano. All those bottom 5 drivers won't benefit from the reverse grid, I believe, as they didn't participate in 50% of the race, but rules may have changed. We'll wait and see on whether that is going to be the case. And of course the pro standings as well, which we will bring up in a couple of moments' time. Of course, we saw the last lap battle there with Finn Kjellberg taking the victory. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get those pro results, so we'll leave that for the moment. But I can tell you that Kjellberg did take that victory ahead of Harry Wills and Neil Butler inside the top three, of Elliot Helder dropping down to fourth place. Of course, the reverse grid race is coming up, the 50-minute race coming up, so make sure you stay with us here at the World Series League's GT3 Championship, powered by IMB, of course. But we're going to take a quick break right now. When we return, the 50-minute race will be coming right up.
London. Brooklyn. London. Brooklyn. Atlanta. London. Harlem. Brooklyn. Kingston. Atlanta, London, Harlem, Brooklyn, Kingston, Atlanta, London, Harlem, Brooklyn, Kingston, Atlanta. London. Harlem. Brooklyn. Kingston.
Welcome back to Le Mans for the second race here in the World Series League's GT3 Championship Media Day here at Le Mans. We've got a 10-race season lined up starting off, of course, next week. But for now, it is time for the drivers to get themselves prepared and get themselves more acquainted with the 50-minute race coming up here. Reverse grid in a very similar format to what we saw last season. My name is Ian O'Leary. I'm alongside Zach Sweeney still for this one, and we saw a very encouraging, very good first 25-minute race, but this is where things get more interesting and a little bit more hectic as well.
This is where things really start to liven up. Of course, we double the amount of time. We go from 25 to 50, and each of the classes get their respective grids flipped right on their head. So really makes things interesting. Even though you might have won the first race, you've got a hell of a job now in race 2 to try and work your way through. And we saw all throughout season 3 that the second race really did get chaotic, especially towards the start. So, well, here's the reverse grid.
Absolutely. Taylor Lane will be taking the start in the lead ahead of Matthew McBride, with Kenny Hermans in third and Stuart Reynolds in fourth. Arjus Yomantas will be in the fifth place ahead of Callum Beamont. Then it will be Elliot in the seventh place ahead of Neil Butler. Harry Wilson, first race winner. Albin Kjellberg will be in 10th. Chris Chatterton just missed out on a top 10 he's ahead of Andy Miller to start off this second race. Then in 13th, it is going to be Lee Holmes, just ahead of Thomas Dandridge and Louis Gardner, rounding out the 15 car Pro grid. Felix Pierre will be on the front of Pro Am ahead of Francois Pedrio in second. Stuart Werners will be third ahead of Juho Huutonen in fourth. Edward Packer fifth and Dean Timms in sixth place. Chris Thacker will be seventh ahead of Michael Patterman. Didier de Vlaming and Jeremy de Boy will round out the top 10, with John Williams just outside in 11th. Liam Ahern, the man he clashed with in race 1, will be alongside him on the 6th row. Just behind Liam Ahern it will be Simon Dodd and then Sebastian Norgran. They'll be together with the likes of Daniel Merchant just in behind there as well, with Alex Bumberg on that outside line. Esteban Haddad as well in 17th, and with Lucas Romano. Then to round off the top 3 positions in AM, it will be Navarro de Boiva ahead of Mark Bailey, Tim McKeon, Connor Botting and Jerome Rains, the top 5. Then it will be Norgran, Boubier, Letts, Sastamoinen, Bouts, Sharks, few of Knockout, Hatcher, Humberstone and Oliver to round out your grid, with a few not actually taking the start there in the form of Craig Steele, Matthew McBride and Tony Norgran. Not entirely sure why, but in a slight change to the rules here this season, Zach, it is still of course the reverse grid race, and it is going to make these 15 minutes that little bit more difficult. But this season we're only reversing the top 10. You certainly do have to fight for those positions in race 1 now to get the benefit of the reverse grid, or at least you have to fight for them more than you did last season.
Absolutely, a bit more of an incentive to try and really hard in race 1. We saw it, some people sort of writing off race 1 to try and redeem himself in race 2, but now you still have to maintain that consistency to have a good race in race 1 and then to have an even better one hopefully in race 2. It stops those people just saying, oh, if I just get above X amount distance in the race then I can start on pole for race 2 and get a relatively slightly easier win by starting towards the front. That cannot happen nowadays in season 4, and really going to be interesting to see how it develops over the season. But here's the trial run, here's the press day, we're ready for race 2.
We absolutely are. 50 minutes of racing with a mandatory pit stop involved as well. The cars this season are limited to 65% of their usual fuel load. That won't get them to 50 minutes, plus they're not allowed to anyway, so they will have to make a pit stop at some point throughout. As you can see just at the back of the Pros train there, Louis Gardner just weaving to warm up the tyres as much as possible. It's going to be Taylor Lane though in control of the field here on this occasion. Stuart Reynolds will be alongside him, and we'll see just how long Taylor Lane decides to wait for, because Harry Wills wasn't waiting around at all during the first race. During the second, Taylor Lane doing something very, very similar. As everybody gets restless in the pack, he now finally does go about halfway down the straight and gets us underway for 50 minutes of racing at Le Mans. In towards the first chicane for the first time. He's got a nice lead, and like Harry Wills before, he's going to be able to take his own racing line going through the first chicane, although Stuart Reynolds hounding him through those first couple of corners at the Dunlop Bridge, and now they plunge downhill. The battle for third, very, very stacked up indeed, but the top 2 have been able to get away that little bit.
They have indeed. Pretty good start for Taylor Lane and Stuart Reynolds follow him in nicely in tow. We see now the Pro-Ams get themselves away. Felix Bale will lead us there. You can see Francois Pedro getting off to a pretty shambolic start. You can see Viners now already pulling to the left-hand side, going the long way round of the first corner. That is the Dunlop curve, and already got his nose ahead. So really, really poor start for the Frenchman as they head in towards the Dunlop chicane. That could be a place loss for Packer as Huutonen goes up the inside, and that is actually Packer up to P4. A bit of a topsy-turvy start as well for the pros, as a couple of people tried to make up some places, but again 2 pretty clean starts now for the AMs.
Absolutely, we'll see if the AMs have a clean start as well, and here they are with Navarro de Boiva on the front of their field, starting from the outside line and getting underway to a nice start. He probably went the earliest of anybody here today out of the 6 drivers that have had to take a start so far here today. Boiva went earliest, and it strung out the field quite nicely, but it's not alleviated problems as off the road for Timo McKeown, and also one of the other drivers as well caught up with him. It was Connor Botting in the Audi. That little transition there from the right hand side, you move over to the right for the chicane for Timo McKeown, just got out of shape, went straight into the Audi, and they both went into the wall.
Oof, that's what can happen if you're not careful, if you get a bit complacent and bite off a bit more than you can chew, and that is a really poor way to start this race for Connor Botting. And yeah, well, that is always suboptimal to say the least. Taylor Lane then leads them down the Mulsanne straight for the first time, but Stuart Reynolds is now going to be hammering him down in towards the Mulsanne corner as they head on to the brakes. Is the Mercedes close enough to fabricate a move? Not on this particular occasion, but this run now off this corner is going to be vital. That run towards Indianapolis is a long flat out section, as is the majority of the Circuit de la Sarthe, and the gap between them only about 2.5 tenths, but already you can see they're breaking away off the slipstream of Callum Beeman and Kenny Herman just in behind there for 3 and 4. So could we potentially see a similar way to this race that we saw in race 1, or is it not going to be that way at all because Stuart Reynolds already on the offence?
Yeah, he's not really deciding to work with Taylor Lane. I think Lane is very much willing to work with Reynolds, but maybe not the other way round. We want to try and keep this group as small as possible because the one behind is quite large, currently being headed by Beeman at the moment in that third place. Callum Beeman holding back Kenny Hermans at the moment, going through Arnage right now towards the Porsche curves. If these groups work to get connected, it would be a much larger train of about 9 cars, involving of course all the main players from the first race, including all of the top 4, the likes of Neil Butler, Armin Kjellberg, Elliot Hellier, and also Harry Wills as well will be there down towards the back of this one, and it looks like they will just about get connected, but Callum Beeman does need a very good final sector here through the Porsche curves, especially to be able to get his way onto the back of the leading two, and it doesn't look like he's quite having that at the moment, at least not to Hermans, or not compared to Hermans, who's running really quite well in that position right now, very close to the back of him. Is he going to be able to look down the inside and have a go? Maybe. Will he go for it at the Ford chicane? You don't see that very often. Decides to back out of it, but that's not going to help them in their chase of the top 2.
Yeah, if they continue to trip over themselves, they are not going to be doing themselves any favours whatsoever, as Butler is now going on the offensive, as yeah, that fight for P3 does still rage on. This is the fighters. Oh my word, 2 cars off there. That's Houghton and Patterman, I believe, going off. We'll take a look as Liam Mahan gets himself up inside the top 5. There's Michael Patterman in the Porsche, just sat at the side of the track waiting for an opportunity to rejoin, and next to him there as well is Houghton. So both of them into a bit of a catastrophic start going into the Porsche curves for the first time. That is not what you want to see whatsoever, but again, it is a breeding ground for accidents. When you go in there side by side, you're almost asking for it, but you have to say the Finn did swipe across just a little bit, but when you are going that speed, it is very difficult to judge at a moment's notice.
It's hard to know from that angle as well, just who was quite at fault for that one, you would argue, as the battle for third has really become just that right now. The train is starting to lose the front 2, and Stuart Reynolds is starting to lose Taylor Lane as well right now. You can see Herman's immediately understanding what needs to be done right now, and he pushes the Porsche along the Mulsanne straight towards the first chicane for the second time of asking here in this race. A couple of people getting on the brakes very early indeed because of just how much speed you gather when you've got so many cars packed up in front of you, as the likes of Harry Wills do. Just in the background, you can see him, the penultimate car in that train, just in the background there. We'll be getting an almighty slipstream down these straights. We'll be doing a lot of lifting off, and this is where the strategy really comes into play, because you might be able to just have that little bit of a shorter pit stop when they eventually get round to it, more than a half an hour into this race.
It's not going to be to the extent of saving lap, as you say, just to have that shorter stop, those extra couple of seconds, as we see a Porsche darting to the inside, trying to either cover off or put on an offensive. You can see side by side there with the Mercedes, that's Wills and Haler going side by side. Unfortunately for them, was not able to fabricate it much, but Albin Kjellberg is making steady progress from the back of the top 10 all the way up into P6, so again he's really making some steady progress and joining this fight for P3. This is the fight as well between Romano Merchant and Ashraf El Haddad for PA in the Pro-Ams as well, so a lot of battles starting to fabricate. But as you say, this is where the strategical aspect of things start to come in, still fighting amongst the AMs as well. There's a lot going on and not many people wanting to stick in single file and save some fuel.
Really not sure. I don't think that BMW is involved really in this in the AM fight, because or are they? Oh no, that is James Slates going very slowly. He must have gotten a slowdown through Tet Rouge there, and he's had to give up quite a few places as the race 1 winner. So not a good start for him in this race. But meanwhile, back to Pro-Ams, and Edward Packer at the moment, who's on the defensive from Stuart Wanners at the moment, just in behind. The two BMWs fighting it out, but you can just see at the front of Pro-Am, for whatever reason, they have spread out an awful lot in the early moments of this race.
They really have, and yeah, well, Packer and Viners are not going to be complaining one bit as they try to stretch their advantage out in front. You can see Packer going semi-defensive. Viners just trying to spot where he's going to go, really. Just look to the right, look to the left and see if there's an open gap. He's instead going to opt just to run single file because he's not quite close enough to go for a ridiculous send to the inside. But you can see they're taking a nice wide line into Indianapolis, trying to set things up and run as close as possible to the leader. But they have broken clear of Pedro there in P3. And again, it's just working together, not bringing any unnecessary fighting into the equation. If you can help it, we're only 8 minutes into a 50-minute race. You know, still a sprint race of sorts relative to endurance racing, but again, you have to think long term. You have to position yourself where you have to think where you want to position yourself late on in the race, as opposed to fighting it out tooth and nail for the start.
This is a replay of Thomas Dandridge having a moment of his own into the Porsche curves, and I'm afraid it's had pretty bad consequences for him. I believe he's back to the pit lane now, as Albin Kjellberg making nice progress in the pro category. There's been all kinds of shuffling here, as I think they realise a little bit that the Porsche of Cullen Beerman is not going to be quick enough at the front of that group, needs something a little bit more, and so Hermans realised that quite early on, got out in front. Kjellberg has been making some nice progress as well, Neil Butler following through. And so we're starting to see a few changes as Taylor Lane gets reeled in and roped into this fight just a little bit. It's starting to break up a little bit towards the front of this train right now. And some of those who performed so well in race one are starting to make their move.
They are again making the most of, while everyone's nice and bunched up, really capitalising on those moments and really making steady progress forward as we did see that a lot in season 3 as well with the reverse grid, people just using the early stages to make some quick progress. As we see Diamantis on the back of Callum Beeman looking to the right hand side, it'll give him the inside line, but that 22 Porsche is going to give him a squeeze, and you can see there the 71 Diamantis forced to concede, tuck back into the line and not really go for much moves. But again, when you're locked in a fight as close as this one, you don't want to be going for silly moves and fighting too hard for places that are sort of, you know, 4th, 5th position in train, because all you're going to be doing is losing the pack ahead and you get caught up in your own little squabble, and then you've got no hope of any places further forward. This is the fight for what is going to be P3 in the AMS. Franken and Bruce Let's get very, very close into the Dunlop chicane. You can see Franken gets a little bit scared offline, and that's going to bring Dirk Bounce and Yamis Asamonin into the equation as well.
Absolutely. Franken made great progress in the opening moments of this race, by the way. He's overtaken quite a few cars already. He's up 15 overall places. Of course, that doesn't account for the number of drivers in other categories that have been in the pit lane. We've already seen, by the way, so many drivers down on pit lane so far in this race, as many as 8. And we might see a few more in a moment, side by side between all these guys into the Mulsanne corner, side-to-side contact between Kjellberg and Helmans. Oh my word, and there's even more as Neil Butler makes it 3 wide. The Porsche is so strong off of these corners and using that to his advantage right now. 3 wide towards Indianapolis, and are they all going to give each other room? Well, just about. Kjellberg steamed through the middle at the moment. Sees parting for him right now. Looks like he's going to be able to hold on to third, although Neil Butler's got some straight line speed on the inside line here. Might be able to do something about that, but Hermans just pushes his fellow BMW into that third place and tries to take 4th for himself down the inside into the left-hander, and he's done that. Neil Butler looking every which way to try and get back through once again. Oh, and he's not going to be able to do it into Arnaz. A fantastic fight, and we'll see if it all allows the likes of Harry Wills to get back involved.
Loving this, absolutely loving this. This is the fight for third class, as you can see there in the bottom right, but also Taylor Lane, who really has fallen off the back of Stuart Reynolds, who from 4th on the grid has catapulted himself up into the race lead, about a second and a half quicker than everyone else on that previous lap, a 3:53.2 for our race leader. He is sailing off into the distance, and it is certainly propping itself up to be a race for second. You can see there Kjellberg looking to mount an attack on Lane as they run through the Porsche curves once again and still eyeing up that move. Kjellberg is, we saw it last season, he's a very aggressive driver. If he can see an opportunity, he will get it done. As Neil Butler, oof, that was very much on the limit.
Wasn't really under pressure from anybody. He is now. Harry Wills gets through on him, but and he's slowing down a lot, is Butler. I wonder if he's got to slow down as well, but yeah, certainly slowing down. Not entirely sure quite why. Is over the line for Taylor Lane. It certainly is a slowdown for Butler as he drops outside the top 5 and he's going to drop further. See how far Taylor Lane drops here. Of course, he started this race from the pole position, I believe, and so he's maybe not up here in terms of raw pace, but he's had a good opening to this race. He's holding on to his positions well. Just needs to kind of fall into line with the likes of Kjellberg and Hermans a little bit here and see where they can take him in this race. Can they take him up to Stuart Reynolds, who's got a nice lead in this one right now? Although having qualified so well inside the top 5, Reynolds, he might be difficult to catch whoever is at the front of this group. We'll wait and see though as they go through Tetrouge. Looks like it's a 4-car train for for second place now, and a 5-car train for 6th, with Elliot Hellier stuck back here now.
Oof, this is really starting to spice up. This is the fight now between Simon Dodd and Romano. Again, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars all in a train. Kjellberg gets past Lane as well. We're looking on the timing tower. Herriman wants to also find his way through as we again take a look at the AMs. That was very sideways there for Saturday morning, I think. Yeah, getting a little bit wide off the exit of the Porsche curves. That allows Ren through, and Franken still holding firm to P5. This is the fight towards the front between Kjellberg, Herman and Lane. As you can see there, they're all trying to follow the gap, fill the gap. Lane pushes Kjellberg through, using that to his advantage, using that slipstream. Is he going to make it 3 wide and try and go for the move back onto second place? You can see there on the run now towards the next chicane, and Kjellberg holding firm, holding confidence. And out of all of these guys, he's the one with the pace to push forward.
Certainly is. Certainly was the most impressive. Well, of course, won the race. The first race we had a little bit earlier on to Kjellberg, so expecting him to lead the line at least for the next few moments, and played it very well as well. Let's not forget, tactically he did play that race very well. As we look at Simon Dodd here at the moment, not starting, not benefiting from the reverse grid because of the top 10 that we have this time, but that was a dive from Didier de Vlaminck, and he feels pretty bad about it by the looks of things. Asravel Haddad ends up in the gravel, and that was a late dive. I don't think it was even intentional actually from de Vlaminck.
We wouldn't expect it to be, and again, it's just small mistakes here and there. The margin of error here at the here at Le Mans is not very large at all. This is how we're going to take another look at. You can see Vlaminck looking there, and just a little bit too squeamish under brakes potentially, and yeah, a little bit too eager, tapping him on the brakes, and as unfortunate for Ashraf El Haddad, who again was a complete passenger at, but still we have a 4-way fight for second place. They run their way through in towards Indianapolis. You can see Stuart Reynolds is completely taken off, so at least for the time being it's eyeing up to be a fight for second. But Kjellberg, as soon as he gets a moment to breathe, as soon as he gets like a couple of corners to himself, he'll then stretch that advantage and try and break away from the likes of Taylor Lane, Herman and Wills, who's also gotten himself into this fight in P5. But yeah, Kjellberg, he's going to be under pressure as long as he sort of is looking behind him. As soon as he sets his eyes forward and gets a moment to himself, then certainly we're going to see that pace flourish.
Absolutely. Let's see what will happen over the next few laps here. Still long way to go, of course. Just over half an hour right now. Kjellberg still leading the line, and I have to say Taylor Lane holding it with the leaders a little bit more impressively than I thought he might actually. I thought he might get rolled a little bit by everybody, but that's certainly not happened. As further behind, pole sitter Navarro de Boiva from AM has relinquished the lead now to Luis Boubier, who's now leading the line in the AM category. He really has gotten through the cars pretty quickly as well as the new leader, and so might be able to run away as well. And interested to know just how they've managed to find themselves 6 seconds off the front of everybody else. That's quite a big gap for this stage in the race, as Hatcher looks like he's got things wrong maybe into the second chicane. A little bit too late on the brakes, and it looks like that car has already been in contact with something.
Yeah, it doesn't look to be in the best condition at all. Here's Luis Boubier just getting caught off a little bit by that stray BMW. He's managed to make his way through without much discretion, but yeah, that was Navarro de Boiva who unfortunately made a bit of a mistake and allowed his rival through for the race lead. Navarro de Boiva doing a lot better than his father relative in this race, who unfortunately is not actually on track at the moment. He's sort of stuck in the pit lane, which is a shame. But both de Boivas last season in season 3 ran really well here at Le Mans. I believe they did get a 1 and 2 in one of the races in the AM category, so certainly a good track for the pair of them. And Navarro de Boiva flying the flag high for the family, and yeah, running up in second place, still with a good shot at winning as well.
And indeed, Jeremy de Boiva in the Pro-Am category will be one to watch as well, although he is now in the pit lane and has been for nearly 12 minutes. I'm afraid it's not been a good race for him so far. We go back to the guys in Pro. 4.5 seconds up to Stuart Reynolds. It is quite a large gap. Is it coming down is the question. Well, it came down by 0.07 of a second last lap, and that's not going to do it. I'm afraid for Kjellberg. Needs a little bit more than that as the leading fight in Pro-Am also really kicks off. Edward Packer trying to defend from Stuart Winus at the moment. We are seeing this in Pro-Am. We were seeing it in Am as well. The two leaders getting away and nobody else being able to do anything about it. So 2 cars for the lead now in Pro-Am, and it remains to be seen how long this stays the same for. It does seem that Winus maybe is just playing a bit of a strategy game right now and intensely staying behind though.
That would explain things definitely, especially when it's going to be a pit strategy game. If he can sit behind, save some fuel, and then save a few seconds in his pit lane, in his pit box, he'll then come out a couple of seconds ahead of Packer once it does sort of filter itself out, which he wouldn't be able to do on track per se. So playing the long game, playing it smart, and hoping to get the jump when it comes to that pit stop phase. So yeah, not giving himself a harder job than he needs to do. Right now, he's perfectly fine just chilling up behind the back of Edward Packer and, yeah, as I say, lifting and coasting some fuel, because there's plenty of opportunity to do it here at Le Mans. If you're the lead car taking the brute force of the air resistance as you run down the straights, about 150 miles an hour, you're going to be using a lot more fuel than those behind you. So, yeah, Vinus certainly doing the right thing, the right call, and just chilling behind.
It certainly is for right now. By the way, I'm slightly surprised as to how dark it is out there at the moment. Every race, apart from Daytona this season, scheduled to start in sim at 4 p.m. Now, I know we are getting towards the back end of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, but, well, we are everywhere, but in terms of autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, I didn't think it would be quite this dark right now. I wonder if maybe this race has started a little bit later in sim than 4, because this doesn't look like a lighting for half 4 in the afternoon. I've got to be honest, but anyway, it's certainly cooler track temperatures right now, maybe helping these guys out just that little bit for the moment. But for the moment, this leading battle with these two drivers just staying the same, and expect it to stay the same for a good while yet. Further towards the front in terms of the pro category, there are a few more groups closely packed together, but not much is happening within them either. Albin Kjellberg doing his best to reel in Stuart Reynolds, but it's not happening really at the moment. 0.05 of a second he closed in on that last lap. It's not very much for Albin Kjellberg. It's not very much for this second group. And even at this early stage in the race, they do need a little bit more than this.
They do, and unfortunately for Albin Kjellberg, I think he's spending too much time looking backwards than he is forwards, because he's more worried about what Taylor Lane and Kerry Herman is going to do in behind. And of course now he's sort of lost the slipstream that was giving him a bit of pace, and you can see they're getting not the best of runs going through the Dunlop chicane and through the S's now in towards Tetra Rouge, and Taylor Lane is certainly keeping pace with him. So Stuart Reynolds out in front, he's got no pressure on him whatsoever and is able to just sort of chill a bit. As we see, there's Harry Wills going for the move for P4 on the inside of Herman. He's got to hope that he can be able to get to the left and get that slipstream and benefit from it. Otherwise, he's going to be a sit and duck. You can see there Herman tucking in behind. Now Lane, is he going to go for the move on Kjellberg, or is he going to opt to sit back? You can see there the BMW going semi-defensive, and that's going to be part of the reason as to why this group isn't catching up to the extent that they potentially should with Albin Kjellberg's paces, because of things like that. Kjellberg sort of moving over to the middle of the track, looking over his shoulders in some sense, and in doing so is just holding himself up.
Absolutely. It's it's hard to know what these guys can do at this point, because they've got arguably the fastest driver in the race at the front trying to catch Stuart Reynolds right now, and he's got the assistance of Taylor Lane down the straights as well, but nothing's happening right now, and you wonder when people are going to start to get restless, and maybe it's right now. Harry Wills went to the outside line there. Kjellberg went on the defensive line. The cooperation now is starting to fall apart. The agreement is starting to be ripped up in front of our eyes, and it looks like there's a bit of racing on now between these guys. Almost an acceptance with nearly half an hour to go that second might be all they can get here.
Yeah, I mean, at a circle like Le Mans, it's going to be difficult to close that 4.7 second gap unless you rely on the pit lane sequence or whatever. But certainly you can see second, third, and fourth, bumper to bumper to bumper between all three of them as they head onto the brakes for the Mulsanne corner. It's all about this exit now. If Lane and Wills can put their foot to the floor a little bit quicker than Kjellberg, then we might see a move down in towards Indianapolis. But again, they do have to be careful, and I think we are starting to see, as you say, this fight for second place start to develop, which is a shame. But unfortunately, I don't think Stuart Reynolds can be beat unless a miracle happens. Here's Harry Wills on the back of Taylor Lane. Is he going to go for the move? He gets up to him with such a quick momentum that I think he caught himself by surprise, got onto the back of that Mercedes in front of him and was a little bit shocked. Fortunately, no harm, no foul there onto the rear end of Taylor Lane, but certainly a heart-in-the-mouth moment, and certainly could have definitely ended very quickly in disaster.
And Harry Wills then started pushing him, so almost the car getting lifted off the ground from both directions. And it could have been pretty bad there, but luckily they all got away with it. And they're able to continue in this fight for second. What is happening, though, is that Elliot Hellier has finally found some of the form that took him to nearly race one victory. It ended up being fourth place, but he's currently sixth right now, closing in ever so slightly, but he's struggled to do that so far in this race. Later than never, I suppose, but even so, it's been a little bit of a surprise as they come through Corvette in this leading group. Hammond's probably choosing the sensible decision there to give these guys a little bit of space to deal with this one right now. It's very close between all four of these, or all three of these. Hammond's, as I mentioned, just giving that little bit of space, but we're about to make it 5, maybe 6 with the addition of Elliot Hellier as well. I've been a little bit surprised at how slowly Hellier's made progress through the field, but now he's here.
Maybe a bit of not confidence after what happened in race one, potentially not going for moves that he usually would, or maybe it doesn't deal well with the pack pressure and is unable really to carve his way through like the likes of Albin Kjellberg or other. So yeah, but what is important is that he has eventually made that progress. But back to this fight between Viners and Packer, we can now see the BMW has been able to get himself in front, and now here comes Edward Packer potentially on the counter-attack. You definitely saw he got a better run into the 4 chicanes, but not really much of an overtaking opportunity. You're not on the brakes for very long, and it is very easy just to get turned across, and those sausage curbs on the inside as well aren't particularly nice to run your car over. So Packer for now running in second, and is more than happy to do so for now. But yeah, Viners did eventually push the button and go for that move. But yeah, a lot of action, and oh my word, that's late on the brakes from Packer. You can definitely start to get the impression that these two certainly don't want to be stuck behind one another for too long.
No, we didn't see the actual pass happen for Winers, but I've questioned why he would do that at this stage when you can. Obviously, it's the more exciting choice to go for the overtake on the circuit. But logically, when you're trying to put in the best race you can, it would be better to stay behind, save the fuel, and jump in the pit stops. Sort of what these guys are maybe doing. Hammond certainly is dropping off a little bit. You can see Hellier as well, just dropping off ever so slightly. Taylor Lane and Harry Wills are just aiming to try and get as close to Kjellberg as possible without killing him, to be honest. And it's working out quite well at the moment. It's still the race one winner defends for all he's worth, and still Taylor Lane pushes him as much as possible. The gap now closes to just over 4 seconds, but it's not really coming down with any sort of consistency or any sort of rate that might see a battle between all of these a little bit later on. Something needs to go disastrously wrong really for Stuart Reynolds to not be the winner here in this one. Through Mulsanne corner they go. This group is only going to get bigger and only more tense as well.
Interesting to see what will happen when they get to the pit stop window, though, because of how different people have sort of saved their fuel at different points and how much they have when they do come into the box. That could space this fight out a little bit, because chances are they are not running at the exact same fuel level by the time they get to the pit stop window. But you can see there, Taylor Lane is getting a lovely rear view image of that BMW in front. Now in towards Indianapolis, all of them having to bunch up, and Constantine their way in. Albin Kjellberg leads the way, and under no pressure still from Taylor Lane, who's unable or unwilling to go for the move. But Harry Wills is certainly going to get a little bit restless, stuck behind that fellow Mercedes just in front of him. But yeah, as you say, Stuart Reynolds is maintaining that gap of 4.1 seconds, and I mean, all it would take really is for him to miss his pit box a little bit, you know, put a little bit more fuel in them, potentially he might need to, and very quickly that 4 seconds can very quickly close. But that is clutching at short straws and sort of hoping that Stuart Reynolds gets a bit unfortunate with himself.
Yeah. Well, oh, goodness me, Harry Wills very quick through that first right-hander, and then just having to pull up a little bit and then fall into line with the pace that is being set at the front of this little train right now. Kjellberg still leading the way around and still burning up all the fuel as well as we approach the halfway mark or half an hour mark in this race. Juventus also gets involved as Hemmens has been off, I think. Hemmens may have been off or may have had to slow down, or had a slow down, because he's dropped outside the top 5 and he's dropped a couple of seconds off the back of the train as well. There he is. He's been just hanging back and taking things a little bit cautiously through the opening moments, and there it is, the slowdown. They're really, really deadly around here.
They are. You rely a lot on momentum and having that straight line speed and the acceleration off corners as well. So as soon as you are forced to slow down, it's certainly not pretty whatsoever. Here's Bruce Letts under a lot of pressure from Ren, who's forcing the gap open on the outside on this run now towards Indianapolis. The Audi again forced to concede as Bruce Letts just holds the inside firm and does not let the Audi on the outside have any passage through. But yeah, Ren very, very aggressive, elbows out for sure, and really pushing the limits. Now having to turn our attention back to this fight for second place, because it's all up and down. This is what we I guess are going to have to get used to with 3 categories, all the action going through. Now is Taylor Lane going to go for the move, and still once more all over that rear end of the BMW, and still again Kjellberg not trusting him to not go for the move.
No, certainly not. Taylor Lane just pushes Kjellberg, but as you say, not a lot of trust there between the two of them. Oh, and that might be why there's contact on the way in, and thankfully Kjellberg able to get on the brakes quickly enough there to slow the car up in time. Lane just backed off ever so slightly into the braking zone as well, just to almost as if he'd regretted what he'd done instantly there, thinking that Kjellberg was going to go sailing off into the gravel, but was able to pull it up in time. And everybody stays pretty much where they were. Who's not able to get quite as close on this occasion as he did previously, but there is still a bit of space for lifting off, as there's a car just around the corner there. It is indeed a lap car that these guys are going to have to negotiate, something that we've not seen so far, something that we're going to see a lot more of throughout this season, I would imagine, because the AM cars in reality start actually quite a few seconds after the pros, so at shorter circuits that we have on the calendar, we really are going to see a lot of lap traffic come into play. Thinking about particularly about circuits like at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park at Mosport, where the laps are going to be very short and the gaps between when pros and AMs starts is quite big.
Yeah, it's going to space itself out, and the pace differential as well between the pros and the AMs is something to look at, and it will play a factor. Maybe we'll have to just wait and see when we get to that point in the season, but certainly a lot of good tracks to look forward to, a great calendar lined up with a variety of circuits and a lot of really iconic ones as well. And still this fight developing amongst the pros is really getting the season off to a good start and really teasing us to what is to come. This isn't even the first round, still just the press day, but they're fighting as if it's for a championship, but these lot really giving us a great show. And as I say, if this is what the rest of the season is, then certainly looking forward to what is going to be 10 rounds of action over the remainder of the year. We round it off with Bathurst, which is a really interesting track, not one that you often see really for a season finale.
You certainly don't. I have seen it on a couple of occasions in the last year or so, but yeah, not too often, not too common. A change, of course, from the Daytona season finale, where most things were pretty much wrapped up. We didn't quite get the real drama on the final day that it looked like we were going to get, especially in AM. Most of the drama came in the couple of weeks before, where Dean Timms especially really rose to the fore and then didn't have an awful lot to do throughout the remainder of the races. We'll also keep you updated on the drop week rules as well, and whether they apply on the final round or not. We'll have to wait and find out all of that stuff when we get the season properly underway. But it's very much pit stop time. Half an hour into this one, and this is not the limit that these GT3 cars can go in terms of 65% fuel. 8 laps certainly not the limit, but it's certainly the norm in terms of most of these drivers coming in. Interestingly, Albin Kjellberg, after leading the line for most of the race, still got fuel on board to do at least another lap.
or well, maybe we'll see if he can actually make it around. But yeah, he's certainly going to be on the limit, and fair play for trying to go that extra lap. He's not going to be under any pressure from Taylor Lane, and hoping that the busy pit lane sort of people start to trip each other up just a little bit. But Stuart Reynolds seems to be in clean, and will be fueling up that car. No tyres, of course. The tyres are fine. It's just the fuel tank they're worried about. But yeah, Kjellberg and Wills as well have been going for a while, and now Stuart Reynolds leaves the pit lane. So yeah, pretty ordinary stop for him, in and out, easy peasy, and will rejoin the circuit. But crucial times now in this race. This is make or break, really. You need a good pit stop phase, otherwise it's going to be really hard to recover in from now, because you haven't got long left in this race left to recover.
Certainly not. Neil Butler there with a nice pit stop, and I'm afraid Yomantas with not a good pit stop at all, a good 3 or 4 seconds longer than maybe it should have been, and that has put him down in towards the clutches of Neil Butler. Now it's got him behind Heremans as well, with most of the others really quite spread out at this point. He's actually had one of the quicker pit stops in the entirety of the field by the looks of things. Taylor Lane and Elliot Hellier just stuck together right now, and we'll see where Kjellberg and Wills come out compared to them, as the Pro-Ams now are into the pit lane for the most part. Winus and Packer look like they have come out of the pit lane pretty much as they went in.
Yeah, it's still them running as they were, but yeah, we are very much looking forward to the remaining sort of 17 minutes left of this race. Still waiting to see how Kjellberg and Wills are going to come out after this pit stop phase as well. You have to imagine that Kjellberg is not going to make much major progress and get the jump on Reynolds, but maybe he's closed the gap just a little bit to give us a final sort of couple of lap showdown to the end. But Vinez and Packer still as they were. Packer trying to close the gap onto Vinez, but yeah, still nothing much materialised, and we see the AMs also rounding off their pit lane sequence. But yeah, there's Hellier as well up in P4 looking to make progress, and again, is what is to be expected. The gaps between a couple of drivers are starting to space out because of the differing fuel levels as they came in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not, by the way, a real gap, or it wasn't a real gap between Hellier and Reynolds. They do still have about 3.5 seconds between those two. The battle for third in Pro-Am has just livened up ever so slightly as well as a result of those pit stops. Liam Ahern looking strong in this race here today after that pit stop especially. It's taken him up into that fight, one of the shorter ones inside the Pro category. And in Am, Lewis Bouvier looks like he's held on to the lead quite nicely. Overall, he's got 8 seconds over Dirk Batts, and it was one of the quicker pit stops as well from the class leader in AM. So it seems to be that Albin Kjellberg and Harry Wills are the only ones able to complete 9 laps here in this race. I'm especially surprised about Kjellberg going that early, because he's been pushing the wind out the way for everybody so far in this race, for the entirety of the race so far. So I've no idea how he's managed to stretch out so much fuel, but he is starting to struggle now towards the end of his stint. Harry Wills has caught him up by 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds towards the end of this one.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that Kjellberg is on the absolute limit and running on fumes when it comes to that fuel tank. Both of them follow each other in, as to be well expected. No way they're going for another lap on that fuel tank. Both of them into the pit lane, and it's a race against time for the pair of them in their respective fights. They were in the same train, so they've got to hope that they can get in and out before the rest of the competitors. They will have a shorter stop, a lap's worth of fuel shorter as well, because they've managed to go that lap longer. So has it been the compromise they would have hoped for? Have they lost too much time saving that fuel versus how much time they're going to gain in the pit lane? But keep your eyes on Stuart Reynolds and, of course, Elliot Hellier as well. They are the two men to watch in this pit lane sequence. But has Kjellberg and Harry Wills really pulled a worldie with a strategy? Because we saw it a couple of times last season that being the anomaly when it comes to pit strategy can really work in your favour.
Kjellberg out very early there. What's the time? 13 seconds, and that saved him a good 3 seconds on Stuart Reynolds. Is this going to be? It's going to be quite close here. Reynolds is not really very far down the pit lane, and Kjellberg has done the jump of dreams here. Unbelievable pit strategy from him, despite leading the train the whole way around and not seemingly saving very much fuel at all. He's managed to jump Reynolds and actually keep a second margin over him as well. Harry Wills has not done a bad job at all either, but he's going to be fighting for third with Elliot Hellier and Taylor Lane. It's Albin Kjellberg who's going to have the chance to go for the win. Let's hope he's got enough fuel in that car, because he's not put very much in there, and I can't believe he's pulled that one off. That is a big surprise.
I am speechless, and it's not the smallest of gaps either. Stuart Reynolds has got to slow down. That's going to lose him the place to Harry Wills, and he's going to have to relinquish what is second place. So it's gone from bad to worse for Stuart Reynolds over the course of the last stage of the pit lane sequence for him. He was trying to close down Kjellberg, but unfortunately for him has now been swallowed up into this pack of 4 cars between Wills himself, Hellier and Taylor Lane for what is going to be second place. And now you have to say that it's Kjellberg's to lose.
It certainly is. 3 seconds. We saw how difficult it was to catch Stuart Reynolds earlier on when he was in this position. You can't imagine that with the race squad winner, Albin Kjellberg, out front, it is going to be very much easier. We've got a 4-car train to try and do it. Harry Wills, Stuart Reynolds, Hellier, and also Taylor Lane in the top 5. And very interesting as well to see that only one new driver for season 4 in the form of Elliot Hellier inside the top 5 right now. It's been very much the day, at least in the second race, been very much the day of those who were here last season. Those with the experience of the reverse grid race coming to the fore.
Yeah, using their experience very, very wisely indeed. This is Chris Thacker off the exit of the 4 chicane, and again it's exits that really catch people out there, using the full extent of the track. And you can see there the Pro-Am driver into the pit lane for what is going to be quite extensive damage repair. Harry Wills and Stuart Reynolds still fighting over second place and still in a hot dispute, and I'm sure that's going to be the case for the next 12 minutes or so, which should translate to about 3 laps. It's going to be quite close as to how many laps they do get, but yeah, we'll certainly have to wait and see. But you can definitely tell that the newbies are going to have to learn the hard way how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wills still holding on to this position right now with Reynolds. Absolutely no doubt in his mind what needs to be done at this stage. Although Taylor Lane, with the pace now in this group, is beginning to fall away. Just wonder whether Kjellberg wasn't indeed setting a pace that was going to catch Reynolds in the end, and it was in fact a fuel-saving pace that he was setting there to get the handle on the strategy, which is exactly what he's managed to do so far. As Kenny Hermans gets on the curb going towards Arnage and goes for a spin, drops to the last running pro car in this GT3 field. It's gone unnoticed by us, but there's been quite a lot of attrition in this race,
which again is to be expected. You've got to get to the end to reap the rewards of it. But yeah, it's always going to be a race of attrition, especially when it comes down to fuel saving and being on the absolute limit, as we saw there with Albin Kjellberg, who really is going to be very, very close when it comes to fuel. We saw it last season with Timothy Vandenbroek as well. There's Sebring, who tried something different with the pit lane, and that race of attrition, having to deal with the mental fatigue all the way through, that pressure all the way through. And if you collapse underneath it, then yeah, it's certainly going to be difficult. But still, the fight is some things don't really ever change between Edward Packer, who's been able to get the jump over Stuart Vines over the pit stop sequence, and it is up into the race lead, but certainly do not count this fight out at all. Only 3.5 tenths separate the pair of them, and with only a few laps left to go, you can definitely count on that BMW going for the move.
Certainly can. There's going to be a good fight between these two, and we might well see a battle for the win in pro and overall just yet. Certainly one here for 8th place between Callum Beeman and also Chris Chatterton as well, one of the returning drivers as well, this time in a BMW. I believe he was in a Ferrari last season, but I can't quite remember. Now trying to apply that pressure and make his way up the order. This is where the real fight is, though. Hard to get a handle on the lap times on that occasion, of course, because there were pit stops involved, but the gap now is 2.2. It's coming down. It certainly seems, just monitoring that actual gap, that it's coming down. However, Harry Wills' pace has just absolutely blown this group to absolute pieces. Look at this. They're all individuals again.
Yeah, really spread out over the course of the last couple of moments. But yeah, Harry Wills really using some good pace and might actually close the gap on Albin Kjellberg. That gap has come down just a little bit, and yeah, Stuart Reynolds, the closest between all of them is Elliot Hellier on the back of Stuart Reynolds for the podium place. So Hellier is going to be looking to make amends, and oh my god, is that Stuart Reynolds into the barrier? Yes, it is. He's tumbled down to P4. It'll soon be P5, and oh my word, what looked to be the perfect race from start to finish for Stuart Reynolds is turned into a really, really poor show, and he had the perfect first stint, didn't look back at all, and it's really all come undone now in the second one.
Well, just, oh my word, it's a big hit as well onto the wall. But yeah, as you mentioned, promising pace here today from Reynolds, but no results to show for it, really. He was towards the lower end of the top 10 in race 1. He's not going to finish, or at least to see the checkered flag anyway, in race 2. So, yeah, that is it for him, I'm afraid, here in this one. It's no podium from the position that he was in. It seems to be Albin Kjellberg versus Harry Wills for this race right now. Although with no assistance behind, Wills beginning to struggle to close this gap at quite the rate that he was. I think one of the most disappointed people to see that car in the wall there, other than Stuart Reynolds, might be Harry Wills, because he's no longer got that pusher down the straights and he's got to do all the hard work himself with only 2 laps remaining at the line.
It's going to be tricky for Harry Wills, but he's got the pace and he's certainly got the determination to try and close the gap. And Albin Kjellberg didn't want to make it 2-2 to, set up his season going into round 1 on a high, to have that confidence to start the season and to have a double win going into round number 1 at Spa. It's going to be a perfect way to start it, but if Harry Wills has got anything to say about that one, he's going to try and interrupt his perfect day in the office and certainly spoil the fun just a little bit. We'll have to see what the pace was like over the course of this previous lap as they both crossed the line, but for both of them, +9 places for Albin Kjellberg, +7 for Harry Wills. Both of them have made steady progress towards the front of the field and really shown themselves as the top dogs, the ones that have set the standard going into the season.
Absolutely. In terms of an entire championship, though, you'd certainly, based on season 3, raise questions about both Albin Kjellberg and Harry Wills because of their consistency throughout last season. Oh, as Harry Wills very nearly loses the car there. That was exceptionally close to a big incident. Of course, Elliot Hellier as well, over a season, is very much an unknown prospect as well. So there are a lot of unknowns in this pro category heading towards the season itself, starting in 1 week's time. But with just 2 laps to go, there's uncertainty about who's going to win this race right now. Are we going to see Albin Kjellberg go 2 for 2 and take a sweep of the press day here at Le Mans? Or are we going to see Harry Wills return to winning ways here at Le Mans once again? A circuit which he picked up a couple of victories, especially in the US Championship last season. He had some great fights towards the end with Sean Campbell, but a different opponent on this occasion, albeit just as formidable. Any mistake at this point is certainly going to cost you. I mean, Kjellberg or Wills picking up a slowdown penalty will pretty much seal this fight and seal this race.
Yeah, the margin for error is very slim. They have to be on it from now all the way to the end of this race. And again, keeping our eyes on this Pro-Am fight. In the AMs, it seems like Boubier is sort of running away with it ahead of Dirk Bouts. 6.5 seconds clear is Lewis Boubier, and yeah, really running a perfect race, but very close, hotting up amongst the pros. As you can see, the gap now between Albin Kjellberg and Harry Wills is less than a second between the pair of them. So closing up, and as you say, with just under 2 laps left to go, Albin Kjellberg is going to start to feel the pressure. And between the pair of them, we've seen a lot of desperate moves, as you said, over the course of a season. Both of them raise questions about their consistency, because in situations like this, it's very easy to lose your head. And once you've got 2 of them going head to head against each other, well, that's certainly going to be a recipe for at least a little bit of chaos. But fingers crossed they can keep it nice and clean, because you can see now Harry Wills is picking up the full advantage of that slipstream behind Albin Kjellberg.
He's done a very good job to close this one in the way that he has. It was the fastest lap of anyone's on that last one there from Harry Wills, and I believe Albin Kjellberg got an off track because we don't have a lap time for him, but we know that Harry Wills is all over the back of the BMW at the moment. But we saw that with Kjellberg trailing going into the final lap, he was able to overhaul Elliot Hellier. So has Harry Wills taken note of that? Is he going to be the one to stay behind to the final lap on this occasion? Are we going to see some jockeying for position here? Does Kjellberg want to be in second onto the final lap as well? We very much could see both of these guys trying to be second heading onto the final lap, and that kind of dumbing down of the pace could very much allow Elliot Hellier to get involved as well. He's only 2 seconds away.
He is. The gap isn't much at all, and if they trip over each other, as we constantly come back to, that gap is going to come down very, very quickly indeed. Harry Wills tucked up behind that BMW of the Swedish driver of Albin Kjellberg in front. Again, this Pro-Am fight, Vinez not able to get to the inside of Edward Packer into the next left-hand, the second of the two Mulsanne chicanes, and back up towards the fight now. This is P5. This is your Mantis looking to get himself up in a P4 on this run towards Indianapolis, side by side between the pair of them. Taylor Lane still has that inside line, the 32 Mercedes, and is able to hold firm out in front. But yeah, about a lap and a bit left to go for these guys out in front. Edward Packer still under pressure, so a lot of battles left to be decided, and not a lot of time left to decide them either.
No, not really. Only one lap when we get to the line for everybody. Packer just staying in front there as Taylor Lane has gone off for Arnage here. Johan Tusk went down his inside. We saw the bit before this, but there was a dive. Oh, a slight contact. And an awkward one for Taylor Lane as well, because he can't really... oh, well, well done for getting that one out of the way without hitting everyone. But yeah, not good news. Taylor Lane, who drops down to ninth, and it's disappointment, really, for him after what's been a pretty encouraging race overall. But thankfully for him, it doesn't matter in any sort of points way. It won't affect his season in any way at all. As we go on to the final lap, it's Albin Kjellberg versus Harry Wills for one more time around this famous Circuit de la Sarthe. And you could flip a coin right now and have a better idea of what's going to happen.
Absolutely. It's heating up now for the final lap as Felix Payal leads Michael Patman and Norgran as well, the fight for P6 in the Pro-Am category. All of them have been going at it, all of them Porsches as well. They will have about a lap and a half at the line as well. But Albin Kjellberg and Harry Wills, you have to argue that Harry Wills is in the better position of the two in that slipstream. He's going to have the advantage, but remember, Albin Kjellberg proved that you can get moves done pretty much at any point on this circuit, so do not count it out at all, and this is probably going to be one of Harry Wills' best opportunities yet.
Yes, but will he want to take it? Because if he does it now, then Kjellberg has a chance to come back at him again. He does do it now. He goes to the outside line. Is it too early? We'll find out. But Kjellberg will tuck in here. He won't be too disappointed to lose the lead. And I actually think he'll be pleased to lose the lead at this point, because it allows him to just get in behind, get the slipstream, and then he'll be able to strike at Indianapolis, where he was able to before. And in the end, he was able to hold on for a race-winning move towards the end at the Porsche curves, of course. So the plan might just be falling into place for the race one winner right now.
Might well indeed. Now Albin Kjellberg on the run towards the second of the two Mulsanne chicanes. He's certainly close. Harry Wills parking it nicely in the middle of the circuit, but opting to go for the racing line. Is Kjellberg going to dummy to the left-hand side and try and get his nose in under brake? And the answer to that question is no. He's opting to stay behind, and don't forget that Hellier is only 1.8 seconds back. Still a long way left to go in this lap. Still a couple of overtaking opportunities left to go in this race, but Harry Wills is not waiting around at all. He's trying to use any advantage he has got to break away and limit the advantage from Albin Kjellberg behind.
And weaving around as well to break the slipstream right now. Let's not forget that in the qualifying session, Harry Wills was quickest out of everybody, so he is using that little bit of pace right now, and Kjellberg seemingly struggling to keep up. He breaks very late into Mulsanne corner as well, and his exit is going to suffer dramatically as a result. I don't know if he's close enough here at this point. He might have miscalculated ever so slightly. He might just not have the pace, as Harry Wills once again weaves around, breaks the slipstream towards Indianapolis. It looks like he's going to be able to hold on to this position just for the moment. Kjellberg really closes in once again, but he's nowhere near close enough for a move at Indianapolis, I don't think. He really does have that great top end, but not close enough. He's going to have to wait for the Porsche curves, or will he? He breaks late. There's a lap car that spun just in front of Harry Wills there. It's just balked him ever so slightly, and it might offer the chance now to Kjellberg to get close enough, and maybe make this move exactly how he did to Elliot Hellier just in behind here right now in the first race as well. Let's see on board with the BMW now. Wills still weaving around, defending for his life right now, looking to try and hold on to the inside line, but which way's best? Kjellberg decides to go for the outside. He doesn't have much choice. He's going to try a repeat of what happened last time. He's been shoved out wide by Wills, who looks like he's going to be able to hold on. It was very stern defending from Harry Wills, and it's done the job by the looks of things. He's able to storm through the Porsche curves for the final time, and he might well take home victory as Hellier and Kjellberg get together once again at the area of the racetrack where they clashed one race ago. Will Hellier make a last lap lunge for second place? I don't think he's going to. He's not close enough. But with a last lap defence, it's going to be Harry Wills who takes the victory here at Le Mans. 50 minutes of racing comes down to that. Wills takes the victory in the reverse grid. Kjellberg with a successful day for second. Hellier on the podium, but finally as well in third. As by the way, there's battles in the background. Bierman goes around at the Ford chicane. He may well end up finishing in ninth and last. He does indeed. As on the final lap in Pro-Am, Edward Packer looks like he's held on to the win.
Oh, just about though. I did see that Viners was able to get in front of him on the timing tower, but through the Porsche curves for the final time for these Pro-Ams, they've been at it all race long between Packer and Viners, and it seems as though the number 15 BMW is going to get the measure of them. A BMW 1-2 nonetheless, so does go to show that the Mercedes and the BMW do seem to be the cars to certainly set the standard over the course of the season, so do certainly expect it. But yeah, Packer with a really, really good race and held on very well.
Another last lap defence here. Edward Packer is going to take the victory in Pro-Am ahead of Stuart Warnes. Nobody really got close to these two all day long, and a flash of the light from them both, almost acknowledging the race that they have just had together. Even more so from Stuart Warnes there. I think they both enjoyed that one. And a good setup for the season to come as well. I have to say that in fourth place, I've been very impressed by Liam Ahern actually in the Pro-Am category. He's done a very good drive there to get up to fourth. Don't forget he was quite a long way down towards the start of that race, and he made up most of those positions in the first half an hour or so. So watch out for him throughout the 10 race season as well, and you'll be watching out for Lewis Boubier as well. He's going to take victory here in the AM category. Might just about hold on to second place ahead of Andrew Letts. There's a bit of a battle there, but for the most part, we have not seen this Audi challenged all day long. Anyone up towards the front here in either of the races will be ones to watch throughout the World Series League's GT3 Championship powered by IMB at some point throughout the season. Lewis Boubier over the line for the victory. Dirk Bouts will just about hold on to second end of Andrew Letts, although not by that much at all. The two of them also weaving across the line, almost to acknowledge the battle that they also nearly had towards the end of that race. But that's just about going to do it in terms of the racing here today. We've got quite a few drivers to come across the line just yet before we can show you the results. But a very successful press day there, Zach. We've got a bit of a feel for the championship, a bit of a feel for the drivers and who's going to be up there towards the front, and some great racing to boot as well.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, we can't decide who's going to be the main championship contenders of one race here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, but you can certainly get an idea and sort of start to hedge your bets at who might be quick. You know, the likes of Harry Wills, Albin Kjellberg, Elliot Hellier as well is a bit of an unknown sort of prospect amongst them, and a lot of really quick guys. The main thing though is that between all three categories, the pace does seem to be really close, and the racing too, all up and down the front, the midfield, and the rear end of all three categories. So, you know, it's going to be one to look forward to for sure, and certainly good omens going into the first round of the season next time out at Spa.
Absolutely. I think this three-class structure as well has shown that every driver can indeed get a very good result in the class that they are in, the respective class that they were in, whereas that might not have been so true during the previous two-class format that we had last season, where there were some towards the bottom of Pro and the bottom of AM especially that just didn't really stand any chance of getting anywhere near the glory. So good to see that we're spreading out the love a little bit more in that respect. Yeah, very much excited to be getting underway with the season. Of course, as you mentioned, it will be Spa coming up first. Then a couple of circuits that we didn't have last season in the form of Hockenheim and the Red Bull Ring. Interlagos as well, being another circuit that we didn't have last season. Then a more familiar one in the form of Watkins Glen. And then a bit of a new one in the form of Montreal. Very much looking forward to Monza on the 23rd of November for round 7. Monza produced a couple of great races in EU and US, of course, so looking forward to that. Then we've got Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, probably the oddest of the circuits out there. That'll be round 8, and it'll be an interesting one. Then we've got Daytona and Bathurst to round out as well. But let's take a look at those results before we leave you tonight. Harry Wills with that late defence of his victory there, taking it ahead of Kjellberg and Hellier. Then it was Yomitas and Neil Butler rounding out the top 5. Chris Chatterton 6th place ahead of Taylor Lane. And that late moment for Kenny Hermans and Callum Bierman there, sending them to 8th and 9th. Stuart Reynolds didn't get to the end in the end. Neither did Matthew McBride, Andy Miller, Thomas Dandridge, Lee Holmes or Louis Gardner in the end. In the Pro-Am category, it was Edward Packer who just about held on to victory ahead of Stuart Winers. Francois Pertrau got to the end on the podium ahead of Liam Ahern. Lucas Romano rounded out the top 5 ahead of Felix Pearl, who was the pole sitter for that race. Simon Dodd recovered to 7th ahead of Dieter de Vlamink. Juho Huutonen and Sebastian Norgran round out the top 10. Alex Bomberg and Chris Thacker were the final drivers on the lead lap. Michael Patterman 1 lap down. Daniel Merchant in that 14th place ahead of Jeremy de Boyver. Surprisingly, Esravel Haddad, Dean Timms, John Williams, all of those drivers not getting to the end. They'll be ones to watch throughout the season as well. Luis Boubier will be in the AM category as well. He beat out Dirk Bouts and Anthony Letts in that one. Jerome Rains and James Slates running at the top 5 ahead of Tony Norgren. Then Jarmo Sastermoinen in that 7th position of Gus Franken, Jesper Starks and Craig Schill to round out the top 10. Andrew Hatcher, the final driver on the lead lap. Mark Oliver and Glenn Humberstone just missed out ahead of Connor Botting, Jürgen Knockhart, Navarro de Boyver, Timo McKeown and Mark Bailey, all who did not see the checkered flag. Well, there it is. The press day here for the World Series League's GT3 Championship is indeed over. I very much hope you have enjoyed it. Before we go tonight, let's just remind you of the prizes that are up for grabs here in this season for these drivers in each of the 3 classes. The first placed driver gets an IMB Racewear jersey, IMB Racewear boots and IMB Racewear gloves. The jersey and the gloves are up for grabs for those in second place as well. And the IMB Racewear t-shirt and sim racing socks also for those finishing in 3rd position in all 3 classes. That applies to both EU and US championships as well, of course. But that is just about going to do us here tonight for the broadcast. Very much hope you have enjoyed the press day and hope you will join us for the opening round at Spa coming up in 1 week's time, same place for the EU Championship. But in just a few hours' time, the US Championship will be getting underway with its press day. So I hope you will join us for that one. It should be an interesting race if the EU Championship is very much anything to go by. My name is Ewan O'Leary, though I've been alongside Zach Sweeney and David Christie has been behind the cameras. And until we see you next week for the opener at Spa, it is goodbye for now.